Hi, I'm James Stuber, and welcome to Course Builders. This is a new series where I chat with the creators of online courses to find out what makes a great course. Today's guest is Wendell Britt, a world building extraordinaire and the creator of Mastering the Game of Allyship, a course on how to be a good ally to your marginalized peers. If you can't stick around for the whole hour, I've put timestamps in the description below. Let's hop on in. I want to talk to you about the Alexander Technique course because I'll probably take it when he releases the next one. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Michael, if you're listening to this, I've no gun pointed to my head. This is fully, freely offered. I'm really interested in this period of time in which we're trying to figure out how to, one, like digest wisdom, like package it, send it in a digestible format, especially the stuff that's like really hard. And everything that I've seen about Alexander Technique has made it seem like, oh yeah, this is the kind of thing that you go to Dagobah to learn from Yoda. And
Yeah.
then like, you can't do that. And yet the one major constraint that's sort of happening really for all of these types of sort of quasi-esoteric teachings is that like we are inside computer, and that some people are just like, well, I guess that sucks, or oh, I guess I'll give the worst version of it and maybe charge less. I've seen that with like yoga teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And what Michael has sort of done is been like, no, we're going to try and do like the dopest version of this kind of on purpose at distance, just because that seems like a good thing to do. And it shows up in every sort of piece of the course. It's very clear that like he's thought deeply about the state of learning and about how to transfer that which is essential, even when it's slippery. I think there's, as someone who talks a lot and can sometimes talk their way out of any anxiety around a situation, the sense of presence that comes through, which it feels like it's key for Alexander Technique, shows that, oh cool, this person has established some manner of mastery. And then just the deep understanding of like, okay, here's the important bits, here's how you can't avoid them, here's how exactly how they have to show up, and being able to take people's like perception as an object and do things to them. I'm just like, yeah, that's teaching. Being able to sit in front of a bunch of kids and make them not kill you, that's prison wardenship. But to be able to like hold the awareness of what they might be seeing, get ahead of it, get ahead of what's going to happen to them when they shift into another emotional state, I like hunger, sadness, anger, and already having a plan for that, all while staying in your own presence. I'm just like, yeah, that's teaching, that's instruction. And of course, now that we're talking about doing this online, it takes even more mastery to do it, but it's no longer like impossible. And I've just seen that with other courses that I've taken, and this one, which again is just kind of just put on its feet, has all the essential bits. Like it's just gonna get better over time, and it is like mastered. Again, mastering the essential.
And it's crazy to be able to take a technique that's so much about your body and so much about your physical presence, and to be able to transmit that over the internet, where most of us are so narrowly focused on the screen and just very closed off. It's really cool to see that happening.
Yeah, and again, like I'm maybe like 3 videos away from being done, and the way that it sort of builds surprise and delight, it's even also just like a nice hero's journey that I'm going through, because I've done like a lot of mind body stuff that kind of will come up even in my course a bit, but the pieces that I'm like, oh, I was missing this, oh, I was missing this, oh, this is similar to a thing that I've learned in this one context, but now adding this aspect deepens sort of everything. Again, I wish I had better language for it, but that instruction that makes all other instruction better, that's the stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Michael this week, I think, so that'll be cool. So your course is called Allyship, and you're coming out with a new cohort of it pretty soon, right?
Yeah, or rather a new edition. So
New
the course
edition. All
is
right.
Mastering the Game of Allyship. The first version was my let's just throw it on its feet and sort of see what happens. And this next version is now what happens after you do that, and taking all the feedback and figuring out what works and figuring out what doesn't, and figuring out the dreaded, irritating, itchy version of it. That's actually pretty essential to thinking, the marketing aspect to it. That has been pretty much like the last few months. And so I've been trying to like distill it, yeah, into its 2.0 version that gets people not just like in the gates, but across the finish line. And it's not just complete, but again, like I was talking about earlier, is digestible and being able to sort of hold space for where people are at. And again, what is essential versus what I want to be essential, or what is essential versus what I believe to be essential. Like, that has been a very humbling experience, especially around an issue that is so, I think, emotionally fraught for people. Like, the concept of allyship is so impoverished because it's just like, what does that mean? I'm like, no one knows. Literally no one knows. Like, I'm making this course because everyone is being so whack about it. And what it felt like essential for me was, if I can get people to touch, taste, embody at least their definition and have permission to let their definition exist before it's critiqued, before it's improved upon, that will take away so much of the cognitive strain that comes from just deciding like how to make a decision, like what to do next.
Yeah, I'm finding with a lot of these courses, sort of the best area, the best way for people to grow is to have these like spaces where everyone feels like they can explore what, you know, whatever they're working on means to you, you know, whether it's productivity or allyship. If everyone feels like they can bring their current definition to the table and then expand from there, it's much better than, you know, Wendell in front of a slideshow going, this is allyship and you got to do this, right? It's really cool to hear that you're building that conversation with your students and you know, evolving that as your course evolves into new versions and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what's fun about it, I absolutely agree. It's sort of the Simon Sinek start with why. Me and why are in a little bit of a trial separation right now, but that the wisdom of that is still really important. So, and it comes down to like embodiment. Like, when you have that experience and you're like, yes, this, I want to do it. This is good. I'm connected with it. That experience is, you can call it pre-rational, post-rational, I don't know, but like, you feel it in your body, and then after you felt it, you go, oops, and I should do, you come up with reasons to sort of justify it, which does a lot of the work of the learning. Like, once someone has been like emotionally connected with, that need to justify it is a very strong curiosity drive. It doesn't feel like curiosity, but like, it'll make someone be like, oh, cool, now that I've been sort of touched in this way, I got to figure it out. And I'm seeing a lot more courses do that, really figuring out, like, good instructors are getting down to like the bare bones of someone's experience and really like the pain of like, all right, so you wanted to have this because your life was maybe like this. What do you want to do, or how are you going to benefit from that, or how can you get the embodied expression of this knowledge like in front of you as soon as possible? Like, how do you get your hands on it? Because so much of people not putting things into practice, this is me as a recovering personal development junkie, it's fun to get. It's like Pokemon cards. I like tear open the package, I'm like, okay, what cards did I get? Maybe of the 10, one makes it into my deck. But the emotional standpoint is, I was already hyped just tearing the package open. And while that's cool,
that's a great analogy.
There's people making tons of money off of that. The people who are actually getting better at Pokemon have a more, again, like, purposeful, aligned reason for showing up. And for people that get sold by this shiny, it does feel like it's the teacher's job to then keep guiding them through the actual implementation, the actual like fun of it all. Because, like, I'll be real, like, the first version of Mastering Game Allyship, I had like 70 people sign up. I was like, hurrah, this is gonna be so great. And maybe like 15, 20 made it to the end. And even then it was like a very uphill climb for them. And I was like, all right, I could be very mad at white people, which I'm always ready to do, but I think there's something different here. I think there's something about how I clearly nailed the pain, but didn't offer something that immediately relieved it. I do think there was a very long tail for the payoff of what was promised. And I kind of built it on purpose. Like, I didn't really want people to get a quick fix. I didn't think that there was one. And yet that belief also snuck its way into the instruction that made it, again, I think, more difficult for people to get the results than it necessarily needed to be.
So for your new version, what's the ripping open the starter pack version of version 2.0 of Allyship?
Well, so we're figuring, I'm still figuring that part out, because that's really a marketing question. That's the really scary, weird thing about instruction, is that, like, to have the knowledge and then to get it to someone, you have to be someone who can, like, communicate that need and surface the need when it might not already be there. Like Master Game of Allyship 1.0 rode the wave of everyone feeling bad about America being bad in 2020. Great, but for this information, which I do think is important to be valuable in any context, like people have to like on their own encounter a deep sort of personal need. And right now it's the big question is like, what is my next step? How can I get a quick win in this thing called allyship quickly that is fun? Which again seems basic, but that really was like the last thing is nailing like the fun part. Halfway through the course, I started getting feedback that it wasn't fun. I was like, how can that be fun? Like, it's all about fun. I was like, ooh, this is fun for me. And I was like, oh shoot, yeah, okay, that's real. I love world building. I love character creation. Of course, this was fun for me. I actually then created kind of ad hoc a module for like helping people like identify their own definition of fun. Like we took people back into their past and it was like, all right, are you a hide and seek person? Are you a tag person? Are you a Pokemon? Are you a Harvest Moon? Like really getting into like what are experiences you've had that are fun and why aren't you showing up in the important parts of your life in that feeling, and really helping people to bridge that gap and design it. And again, that was an accidental module that showed up that ended up being like utterly essential. Cool. So like as I do 2.0, it's like, okay, how do we start there, helping people recognize like their strengths, helping people like basically feel okay to cheat. Like that really I'd say is probably like the big learning, is that people are still trying to find the right way. And I can guide them into their interiors to find the right way, but if they have like a meta belief that finding the right way must be hard, then they're climbing up this nonsense mountain. I'm like, if they had been my one-on-one clients, I'm like, absolutely not. Like you're taking a month what I would have knocked out in an hour because I don't hold the belief that this should be painful. In fact, as someone who needs and wants to receive allyship, I'm like, I'd like this to go actually pretty quick. I'd like the boot camp to be pretty
I'd like it to
solid.
be easy.
Yeah, I'd like it to be easy for you, because if it's easy for you, you'll show up for me. But that belief that sort of hangs over everything is, this must be difficult. This must be a struggle. I am measuring my success as a function of pain. And I'm like, I don't want masochistic allies. That doesn't scale. So the 2.0 version is very much that permission for like, you're allowed to use your strengths. You're allowed to win overwhelmingly. Your win condition is like deeply personal. And here is a sort of structure and formula that if you just did this, you would be dunking on 80% of all people who consider themselves to be allies, and really like distilling it down to that, while still sprinkling on like the really important, we'll call it the footnote content. I got caught in the weeds with the footnote content. Like the mental models that I used to build this, I was very proud of, and I did feel like would help people a lot. But as I like was guiding people through it like the big thing was that like, oh yeah, this is still pretty heady. Like this is cool, but do I really need all of this? And I'm like, you need all this if you want to be a baller. You need all this if you want to be like cool like me. And I'm like, but do you really need it? And do they lose anything for having not done it exactly this way? And so I've started to even spread the course to be like, yeah, here's the basic level, and if you want to ball real hard, here's like a level 2
extra
course.
step.
Here's a level 3, and like really letting people sort of self-select into that instead of kind of dumping
Forcing
it
it
all
on everyone. Yeah,
in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. What I've seen working with building a second brain is there's always the small percentage of students who just they go hard. They go to every single extra session. They read every single like extra footnote and anything you throw at them. And then there's the students who are like, okay, I'm just going to do the bare minimum and get by, right? So it's cool to see that you're catering to those different levels of engagement.
Well, and then you mentioned trusting it.
And trusting it, yeah.
Keep going.
You mentioned breaking down those mental barriers where it's like, oh, this has to be hard, this has to be a challenge. What are some of the ways that you do that? Because this is something I run into when I'm teaching people things like productivity is they imagine the whole thing has to be hard. You have to be gung-ho and fighting and all the terminology we have around this stuff is around making it hard. So how do you what are some of the ways that you're breaking that down for your students?
Well, in the 1.0 version, this was really key. And I don't know if it's going to stay in the 2.0 2.0 version, but it's still an important concept that somehow I'm going to bake in. But it's taking their student self as an object. So like the first course was broken down to 5 modules that was actually just about characters. It was just about identities and roles. It was the student self, the 10-year self, the ideal ally self, the fungineer self, the person who builds fun, and the dead self. By taking the student self as an object and doing that first, a lot of really good things happened. I was immediately just like, okay, so to be a good ally, you're going to have to learn how to be a good ally, which means you're going to have to take your learning, your preference for learning as an object. And if the goal is fun, let's just go talk to the version of you that learns. Like, what are they doing? What's going on? And for many people, immediately it was just like, oh, like they saw in themselves, like the second they went in dialogue with that person, they're just like, this person hates learning or loves learning but hates producing or loves producing and hates learning or needs, like immediately their blocks will sort of show up because one of the main, again, sort of premises for mastering allyship is that there is a part of you that wants to be an ally. There's a part of you that does not, absolutely doesn't, loves everything about your life right now and wants nothing to do with being an ally. That part of you that doesn't want to do it is way more ruthless. It doesn't have to follow any rules. It doesn't have to be nice because all it's operating is inside of you. So it knows everything about all of your parts already. And it will dunk on them to keep them from going where you want to go. So not just like bringing your student self, but recognizing that your student self's weaknesses are going to be exploited by your own mind. And so you have to find a way to, now that you can take it as an object, make it fun, find the successful version of the student, find the part of your student that like had fun, and lean on them while also kind of finding their enemy and being like, what do you need? What can I give you today that will make it so you don't need to bully this person out of doing what they need to do? And being able to sort of, I call it playing the piano with both hands, because if that need is met, they're not going to self-sabotage, which means that person's actually going to be able to grow. And again, if you just knock out the first module of learning how to be a student, you'll realize, oh yeah, all this allyship student stuff is actually garbage. We're literally just consuming podcasts, reading books, like we're all collectively doing it and it's not turning into action. When this healthy student self is brought online, you don't need a teacher to tell you to see that. You immediately see it, but you do need the teacher to point out, I'm guessing that your student's whack because you're doing this wrong. You haven't actually succeeded at the thing. And so that's sort of the important thing for that. And really the whole course is, it's sort of failing and success came on the fact that it helps people self-identify their own mindset blocks. I love the fact that they're self-identifying it because, you know, we also then take all of these character modules through 4 sub-roles, which was the hero, the villain, the victim, and the guide. So not only do you have a student self, but you've got a student self that's a victim. It's like, cool, let's go talk to them and figure out what they need. You've got the student self that has a villain. Like, okay, what is it? A teacher in your past that is showing up as the villain? Is it just your own inner critic? Like someone is stopping you from achieving your goal. Let's talk to them. The hero, this is the person that for whatever reason keeps showing up and they've got a specific sort of like motivation that they like to do. And if we can be conscious about that, we won't set ourselves up to do anything that is not already what this person wants to do. And then the guide is sort of, again, bringing them into that wisdom state. Like, and how do you increasingly grow the capacities of your student self? And that was a great process because, again, as people sort of realized that, the next steps became just so clear, and they make those next steps. But in that inimitable way, and this is some of the meta teaching strategies that I don't really fully know how to deal with, giving people too much consciousness helped their shadow self-sabotage. The second that suddenly now they're seeing all of that, they're like, cool. So it turns out doing this key process that Wendell makes me do is getting results. We're going to find infinite reasons why not to do that.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I can't hide it from you because I need you to know. But it did seem that like the second that people were doing this, again, core process that I developed or sort of brought into this called the 3-2-1, it was like doomsday. It like brought out like from shadow standpoint, like, oh, we got to break this. This thing is going to work. And so we got to find a way to like not do it, which made me realize that whatever I do teach actually has to somehow still not trigger that part or it won't make it through.
Yeah, you have to ride this fine balance between unveiling too much at once and not unveiling just enough, right?
Yeah. Well, and what was funny though is that that balance exists not just from a content standpoint, because it was actually pretty light on content as far as it goes. I mean, it was 30 modules, probably could have spread it out with more implementation days, but no more than like 10-minute videos. Maybe a little dense from a heady standpoint, but not a heavy lift. But the homework brought out so much in people, and I wasn't accounting for the interior overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, this is chill. Like, okay, you just watch a video, do a journal exercise, everything's chill. But I tuned that journal exercise to be like, oh yes, it's going 4 levels deep inside your psyche and messing around with like some stuff that really didn't want to be bothered with. Something that really also wasn't sold in the beginning. Like I knew that once they got in, it's like, you're going to do some really deep next level work that's going to change your life. But people, and this is, I think, where the blindness for me came from. I was like, well, I knew that anyone doing allyship work was going to do that. And they kept telling me, hey, we'd like to do hard work. And I was like, great, here it is. But that, like, weirdly, the shadow of the people showing up for allyship wanted to suffer consciously, but did not want to suffer subconsciously. And they come into the course where the process was easy consciously, but subconsciously it was super hard, and there was still a mismatch that kept people from moving through. And I was confused, because I was like, no, I did the market research and everyone said they wanted this, so then I built this. And
you almost need to do the market research for the subconscious of all your students.
I mean, real talk, like that was for me as a teacher, that was the level. It was recognizing that, like, okay, it's almost like the salesman coming to the house and knocking on the door and being like, oh, is your father home? Like, I don't want to talk to you, conscious mind. You're not.
Yeah.
You don't pay the bills. You don't get people across the finish line.
Yeah.
I actually do have to talk to the subconscious alone. And specifically, a subconscious that like will be gung-ho, will decide that everything sort of matters. And the kind of horrifying part about that is that the thing that subconscious responds to the most is pain and fear. And I'm like, no, the whole point of this is no pain and fear, but the only reason why a subconscious will override you to do something good is out of that. And that's been a weird journey to sort of reconcile. Again, I'm still sticking into the fun aspect, because either it's okay, sell it on pain and fear. I'm like, no, that's still not my jam, but it does mean that the outcome needs to happen much faster. The outcome of self-knowledge isn't quite enough to keep people going, because self-knowledge is a threat.
Yeah.
Versus, oh, it was so cool that I finally succeeded at this thing in 1 week. I would like another success, even though I'm probably going to have to encounter myself to get it. I've already tasted a material success. And so that's going to keep people moving in the direction.
Yeah. It's like you're so used to, delving into these deeper, like personal knowing type of thing, that what you gave to your students as a pretty straightforward exercise is actually something really hard. And there's a lot of resistance to self-change that is difficult to get over. So it sounds like, moving forward, like you're going to try to figure out what a win looks like early on, so that that internal motivation comes back, so people want to keep going.
Yeah. What's been really cool is that it's broadened my mind, because now as I'm thinking about it, like, okay, what is a win that I could give someone in 1 week for allyship? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't just want to send them out in the world. That seems terrible. Maybe I have them have a conversation with a friend and just say, like, chalk your win for that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But my brain, just the weird, wild place that it is, was like, well, what if I had just like a list of like quest logs that were sort of scaled to the different levels of literal people who needed help? So instead of it being like, okay, cool, I'm going to teach you how to go find those people, and I'm going to teach you how to get the overcoming the unconscious blocks and da-da-da-da-da. Almost Duolingo style, be like, all right, week 1, go to the bulletin board, find a level 1 quest, which might just be have a conversation with someone who you want to be an ally to. Or pick 1 book that you're going to read through the rest of the course and make a pledge to not read anymore. Or like something very specific that will, again, in their life, force them to kind of deal with that. Like, ooh, someone posted an article, but I'm not supposed to do another one. And then they have to sort of encounter over time that tension.
Yeah.
So it becomes more real. But again, that's simple. Like, even though that action is simple, the amount of like subconscious inner work that you're basically doing behind the scenes to hold on to it is pretty profound. And so like kind of enfolding those type of lessons into action has been cool. And then yeah, like really that's a huge need that we're right now, like one of the, from meta level, allies, people who need allyship paradoxically have to learn to be allies to allies, so that they can tell them very clearly on those certain terms, here is what you can do that will actually benefit my life or the life of my direct community. And that's a skill set that's sort of missing. And so part of me is just like, yo, I can have that conversation. I'm allowed in those rooms all the time. That actually becomes a little bit of DIY work that I have to do, but over time actually makes sort of people that show up like, yo, I went to this course and immediately connected with a person of color or a woman or someone outside of my like identity space and helped them in 1 week. Like regardless for why, that doesn't matter. The course becomes the place where that happens. And then that, you know, again, gets people to keep moving.
That's awesome. I feel like this framework you've built, it almost would work for any topic. like you could remove allyship from the equation and, you know, teach this class about I don't know, like nude painting or something, and you could still come back with, you know, the same like personal character development and build it into a course that really changed people's, you know, whole mental frameworks around whatever it is they're learning. I
well,
think
what's funny is that that's basically what happened. Like, I don't know if our last conversation, like I started this whole being a personal development coach with a program called Mastering the Game of Life. It was literally, the goal was, role-playing games, developmental psychology, and parts integration work towards really just helping people get unstuck, again, pretty much in any context.
Yeah.
I only sort of chunked down when there became like a very specific need, and in that hideous marketing way, though I already had like the techniques, going after a specific need increased people actually showing up. And that's definitely still a life goal of mine. Like that, this is how I just sort of teach myself now. Even as I'm in here right now, trying to figure out how to fix mastering allyship, I'm in conversation with the part of me that's like learning, the part of me that's like connected to like where I want to be in like 10 years. And they're in a weird company inside my chest, like doing R&D and figuring out like the next look. And one of the pivots has actually been to move towards diversity and inclusion at organizations, because I'm starting to realize that the work is really important, but the price that I need to charge for it to like exist is a mismatch from how much people have decided to value personally this work. Like, and I can be mad at that as much as I want, but it is the reality of having actually sort of interacted with it. People will pay a bunch of money when the pain is high, and the pain is high when someone gets shot in the streets. Yeah. But they won't make that change without like a bunch of, for lack of a better word, kind of coercive marketing work on my point on just a random Tuesday. But organizations every day are trying to solve this because they are like getting hits to their bottom line. And I've been in conversations with different organizations being like, hey, let's do this. Let me build you a training on this model. You give me the content that you need, and I'll give you the mindset shift stuff that you need. And we'll build some activities that are connected to like your bottom line that will get people moving the needle. And that has been easier and harder in the sense of like, I don't have those connections, but easier in the sense of it makes perfect sense in their language to kind of go that way. So I was like, okay, I'm glad I did this, because I learned that actually there is a place for this in the world that can sort of support my lifestyle. And then with the stuff that I already have, I'm now sort of free to kind of more or less give it away. Like I've been working with certain organizations that are about allyship, and I'm like, hey, I've got this course, I got these materials at huge discount for free even. Like if you can ensure that people actually take this and can find like a accountability structure, like usually the money is the accountability structure, but for this, like it needs a little extra, you just have it because it does benefit people's lives and people are asking for it. And these organizations are like, okay, do we send them more podcasts? Do we, like, they actually don't have the answer either. Right. So that has been sort of an interesting kind of pivot. Instead of going directly to people, going to the organizations that people are going to get this solved, and hooking them up has kind of changed.
Yeah, I mean, that's
a little bit.
That's a smart pivot. It's one of those things where, you know, with a lot of online courses, people, it's crazy to see a course that's very expensive and to see the price tag and get that sticker shock. But what you're able to do as the creator of the course when you charge that much with organizations is, like you said, you can support your lifestyle and you can make a better course because you can afford it. And then when there's a need, you can be basically giving this stuff away for free, right? Or, or close to it.
Yeah. Free is a very interesting term these days, because it's like, I know, like, oh man, so much of the journey has been figuring out like there is an amount. It's almost like the hero's journey cost. There is a cost.
There is a cost. There has to be a cost. Yeah.
And it's getting people to like consciously pay that cost, because free is so easily abandoned, but too much and it's never taken up. And sometimes that cost is just psycho-emotional. Sometimes it's just like accountability.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, and getting really creative around like how to get people to pay that cost for themselves, just from an educational standpoint, has been really tricky. A great example is I'm eating McDonald's like as we speak. McDonald's is very easy. I love going there. It's a great time. I know that I need to eat whole foods, like true, like good foods, but that cost, not even the cost of the food. I'm like, that's chill. I'm like, McDonald's, I'm not going because it's cheaper. I'm going because it's faster.
Yeah.
And it's figuring out for me how to pay that psycho-emotional cost to do the thing that, again, someone out there in the world has not figured out how to get me to pay. And so I am still eating McDonald's.
Nice. Yeah, I used to work at a CrossFit gym, and we would do these physical fitness challenges, like, I want to be able to do a pull-up by the end of the month or something like that. And people would sign up and then they wouldn't commit, right? But one time what we did was we charged $20 for a t-shirt. Said, hey, we're doing this physical fitness challenge, the buy-in is $20 for a t-shirt. And suddenly everyone who signed up was completing their challenges and making it.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible how much that little bit of buy-in, right, makes it a.
This is weird. I'm coming up with this idea in real time. So you're hearing it here first.
All right.
So I'm obsessed with Oracle decks, and they've just been a very specific intellectual curiosity of mine. It's the left brain, right brain of it all, of like, this is made up, but helps lateral thinking by literally like kind of forcing constraints on it. Then there's just the woo part of my brain that's just like, no, it's not made up. I'm actually messing with the quantum realm. And I'm like, all right, chill. You guys don't fight each other because that's a waste of my time. Let's just say that you're both somehow right and just play with it. Just play with it and have a good time. And what I've been exploring recently is the idea of, again, this sort of product to content to real content sort of structure. It's longer and annoying, but it's fun because I like the idea of like building a product. I was thinking about like, what does the Masters in the Game of Allyship Oracle deck look like? Where I'm like, here's a product. You're supporting me. You're getting the thing. The object is in your house. Here's a free companion course, maybe like an upsell course that says, now here's how to use this deck to actually like make the changes in your life. Cool. You did all that and you want to really ball. Now you can show up to the actual course, and you sort of pre-qualified yourself while also getting value at the level of digestibility. Because if I just pitch, here's a pretty Oracle deck around allyship that will support a Black person, I just put that outside my house and it's going to be gone every single day. Like, people are going to buy that. I'll feel weird because I'm like, but they're not getting the results. But I'm like, yes, the set of the people who buy that are more than likely to do the next thing, do the next thing, do the next thing. And by the time they've gotten that, sort of gone up that acceleration ladder, while it's less people, they're more invested. And so like you're kind of testing the cost as it goes up, which again, this is the marketing part that I've been like learning recently, that I'm like, this is gross. It should just be a good idea and they should just come here because they want to be good people. And it's like, but humans ain't like that. And I'm like, but what if they were though?
Yeah. A phrase I love is that marketing is education. And it's such a good way to frame how you think about marketing. So it turns out from this like sleazy, like, like I'm pushing stuff on you, to, hey, like I'm teaching you this stuff, and if you're interested, there's more, right? And like having sort of like build up, lead up content and products and things like that is such a good way to find the people who are not only right for your style of teaching, but also are, invested in the things that you have to say and want to learn more, right? You want to, that's what I love about building in public like this is some people are going to see this and they're going to be like, hey, like the ideas that Wendell has are really cool. Like I want to learn more. And even if they weren't thinking about allyship before, they might be able to, see your teaching style and realize that, hey, there's something more that I want here. Right. So with your Oracle deck or with whatever product you come up with, I love this idea of like having a companion course that's like totally free. That's like, here's what I'm all about. And, letting people know who you are. It's like that education angle. It's like, you can't just be like, here's a deck. You got to be like, here's a deck and here's a little bit of who I am. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what I like about it is that like, well, one's already made. Like the crazy thing is right now, like people aren't buying that, but I can't, like, it's this weird money dance, but like, I can't devalue that content because it's actually worth a thing. Mm-hmm. But so I can't charge the price that I would for the Oracle deck. The Oracle deck is worth a different kind of thing, but it's the McGriddle version. It's digestible. But then when they get the free thing that has the value on top of, they're like, well, I bought this $30-$40 thing, but then I got this $500 thing for free. What else does this dude have? And then of course, if the thing is actually like nailing that value, if it's actually like good, there is this, it's that shift from scarcity to abundance where it's just like, like it doesn't lose its value for being easily disseminated. And that's, I think, has been a hard lesson for me as well, because I have seen it. Honestly, the thing I'm fighting in a lot of ways is the fact that so much of this knowledge about how to be an ally is too easily disseminated without taking action. So I'm seeing that every day, but not being able to recognize in myself that the exact opposite might be true, which is that actual ease, making it easier. There's like a weird line that I'm looking on the other side of the line being like bad, but putting my course too far over here. And it's like, if you can get right to that perfect tipping point, that's the space where I think you can make sort of leverage change. And for me, it's been the motivating factor for it is just like, well, I like, this is my allyship practice. Is building this course is me being an ally. Yeah. And so like, if it doesn't take off, not like in a specific way, but if it's not helping people get results, then have I actually gotten any results? Have I sort of participated in the same sort of weirdness? And so that has been an interesting, like, motivating factor that kind of keeps me, again, in the game. But very much like the final boss right now is marketing. The final boss, like, if I'm going to stick the game metaphor, I'm like, I am grinding through this bullshit forest. The drops are terrible. My party is not spec'd to these conditions. Yeah. And literally the win condition is, I didn't finish Final Fantasy 15 for this exact reason. I was like, I played through the entire game, was like, this final boss is crazy. I've consumed as much of this as I need. I've won the game. Yeah. And yeah, it's an interesting journey in that regard of like, it very much does feel like that game aspect.
That's, we initially met because I asked the internet, like, hey, like, what should I know about world building and like game development? And the internet was like, talk to Wendell. Like, how did you take this concept of world building and like in D&D and all these other games and bring that into, personal development and a change? Like what sparked that development?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the easy answer is there was no spark. It's just being me long enough, doing both of those, and looking at my hands, being like, "Wait a second,
love it.
Why is the right hand doing this and the left hand doing that?" Like, just inside of myself, it was always happening. But there still was like a wall. I was treating them as like two separate continents, and then kind of in a Minneapolis, St. Paul kind of, I'm like, this is tedious. Let's see what happens when we don't have this arbitrary wall. Let's see if there's actually sort of generative connections. And just in my personal life, I keep joking that if I ever write a memoir, it's going to be some of my best memories never happened. Because like some of the most transformative educational experiences that have happened for me have happened at the role-playing table. And of course, the big brain-blowing learning there was, you don't need to go outside to get the learning. Now, even though I've just spent maybe the better part of 45 minutes being like, I do think people need to go outside more, the thing that got me going was there is a lot more contexts of just purely inner work that you can do that will make transformations that will change your outer life, just focusing on that. This is literally about a year and some change ago that really I like committed to this idea. But it only works, this is the thing that I kind of learned over time, if your inner world feels like a real place. So some people go to their inner world and it's just like, oh yeah, it's that weird nibbly, well, it's just a whiteboard in there, and it's just kind of a higgledy-piggledy of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to feel real. Your outer world isn't going to change to match that inner world, because the outer world isn't, I mean, in a lot of ways it is higgledy-piggledy nonsense, but there's no coherence. In Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind, like the magic system is built around this thing called sympathy, where it's like, oh yeah, if you have blood and water, I have a sympathetic link because they're both water. And if you do magic to one, it can like send one over the other. I do believe, this is my woo side coming out, that like the inner world and the outer world do have a sympathetic link, but only as much as you can model your inner world on sort of success structures in the outer world, because our inner world affects how we see reality.
Yeah.
And that's what I was essentially experiencing. Like, I would play a game and I would leave the game and see the outer world different, and then make different choices. It's not that the inner world changed the outer world, but just suddenly the quest threads popped up differently. I could see, oh, you're a quest giver, and I couldn't see that before without having already experienced like a bit of that in internal story.
Yeah, it's like the way we the way we pay attention to the outer world is affected by the way we pay attention to our inner world, right? Like the only interface we have with the outer world is our attention. So if we're paying attention to our, your role playing games, for example, you start to hone your attention and see like, oh yeah, hey, like you're a quest giver, and you're a gnome or whatever.
Well, and the crazy thing about that, like, again, maybe those last 3 months, I finally went into my own brain to what felt like the basement, or really just from an attentional standpoint, where I had dug the deepest grooves. And that's why I like focusing on plays. I'm just like, you can't imagine, like, you can't ignore what feels fun. It's so immediate. Yeah. And it's so deep, and you really do a lot of times have to go to like early childhood. Like, were you I break it down, like, were you a hide and seek person? Were you a tag person? Were you a Monopoly person? Were you a shoots and ladder person? If someone tells me that, I'm like, say I'm on a date or just meeting someone, I'm immediately gonna know like, oh yeah, like everything about your life I can filter through that, because that is such a key success educational structure for you.
Yeah.
We live in a society now where many people's deepest grooves are some of the most engaging, specific-ass content that has ever existed. What I found for myself is that I have 2 core games, and they're not hide and seek. I mean, they are hide and seek. Those are kind of a human thing, but my specific core games are Pokemon and Harvest Moon. And when I finally allowed myself to see that, I was like, okay, well, how is life like Pokemon? And when do you like it more? I'm like, well, I love training. I love collecting them all. I love the idea of like gym leaders of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like connect with this community and engage with them and fight my way all the way up to the top and then befriend the gym leader, and the idea of badges and of exploring like this place and using the experiences that I've had to like help me move through the world. I'm like, yeah, that every time a day looks like that, it's easy, it's fun, it's simple, it's intuitive. And then on the other side, like Harvest Moon is just like, plant the damn seeds, water the seeds, give gift to the townspeople, milk the cow, just hit that stuff, and then just in this sort of almost like flow state of just light, chill sort of attachment. Every time that something fits like that, it feels good for me. So I have to build my life around those structures if I want it to be easy. And if I'm going to shift away from that, it's in my best interest to not shift too far away from those. And I see people trying to do that all at once, where they're like, I'm shifting away from my core game. I'm like, don't do that. You're going to feel a lot of you can feel discomfort, pain, self-hatred, all this stuff, because you don't have anything to latch onto, any sort of existing success structure to show you that you can do this thing.
This is like blowing my mind right now, because I feel like I'm also like Pokemon Harvest Moon type.
Yes!
And like I never framed it in that way, and framing it in that way is like so helpful. Like I'm just sitting here like okay, I gotta
get that golden milk, dog.
Yeah.
I literally have Story of Seasons coming to my house today. I'm so hyped.
Awesome,
I'm like, yes,
dude.
I'm gonna play some more Harvest Moon.
Oh man, I should get that.
It's
Yeah, I'm just.
$25 on Amazon. At least it was like yesterday.
Oh shoot. Okay. Well, I'm gonna pick that up and also take some time later to just like sit down and think about that, man.
Well,
Because
especially so, like in the course, for example. So this is a big 2.0 pivot that I'm trying to do is like help people find their superpower like immediately
yeah,
because
that's a
I
big win early
can
on.
exactly I can look at people and be like, oh, you're not showing up as an ally because you don't recognize how powerful you are, which makes sense
Mm,
because the narrative right now is if you're a white person, you suck and are bad.
yeah.
Let the powerful, great person of color or woman or like queer person teach you the way. All the power goes to them, which is fine, except they're marginalized. So now the power has been given to the people without power, but not actually given it to them, just narratively given to them.
Right. just
which
on
just
paper,
makes
but not.
yeah, which makes it worse.
Yeah.
But everyone has a skill set that they are so good at that if they spend an hour a week doing it, it would transform someone's life to get that level of dopeness. And if someone can own that and see it, then they don't have to be like, how can I be an ally every day? Or how can I do this game that I hate, the suffering at the behest of people of color for fun?
Yeah.
And instead just log in an hour of the game that I love. I love so much I can't even see how much I love it, and do that. And so it's also when the next level is also building your team. So like the win condition that I want for people in mastering allyship now is find your superpower, generate the space for that 1 hour a week, find the people who like playing the game that you like. Those are your allies playing the ally game. Connect with the people who would be transformed by your thing having. If you just got that, that's a dope time
Yeah.
for anyone's life. Just
That's
the ability to recognize who
that's
their
such a
people are.
powerful thing. Like that, those steps are so powerful. And like, I don't know, I spent like a decade like pushing down like all my strengths and being like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. that's not on the path,
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
And
crazy how
so,
much time we spend fighting ourselves instead of just being like, oh, like it would be easy if I did this thing that I've been good at since I was a kid.
well, and it's fun because it's one all the time. Like anytime that I see someone stuck, I'm like, great. Just sight unseen, you are in a free body diagram where energy is going this way and energy is going this way at equal measure. Don't even have to know anything more about it because the universe does not like things staying still. And so when I ask the question, well, why would someone be pulling against this? The answer for both of them is, well, they want to go this way because they think this is nice, and this one wants to go this way because they think this is nice. Depending on where you put the driver of the car will determine your level of frustration. If being still is chill, you've already won. Like that's one of the lessons I want to tell people is you do not have to do this. No one is making you be an ally. No one is making you do any of this. This is completely and utterly optional. And you can just sit on that sort of Taoist Wu Wei. The tensions are going both ways and you sit here and you recognize that stillness is great and you're done. But if you move your car driver to the part that's moving away from allyship, you will immediately, and then choose that they're like succeeding. They're like, oh my God, I'm doing great. This is an amazing day. This guy keeps trying to do that. And every single day I show up and I stop him. We're the Rebel Alliance. We're the best. We're great. We're totally doing this amazing thing. And when you can find that perspective, inhabit it, and then just shift it and be like, yo, what if the rear Rebel Alliance look was being on this side? Your parts go, I mean, if you do the job right, go, oh yeah, that seems cool. Or, oh, we don't have to worry about this. Because so much of the stuff that happens on I guess this is left side, right side. I don't know if I'm being mirrored over there, but on the bad side, it's all made up, does come from childhood. So our adult brain is like, I just want to do adulting and be successful and do this stuff. And our child brain is like, we've never done any of that. The only thing we know how to do is play games and have fun and hang out with our friends and not get more traumatized. So we're just going to keep doing that. And then you look at adults and it's like, yeah, I see that still happening. You're still doing that stuff. And it makes sense because it's worked. It's worked for the whole life. And so the reason that last module is the dead self, it's a very powerful module because that's usually the one. If anyone makes it to that, which is why I was so frustrated when people didn't, a huge shift happens because that part that they've been pushing back that whole time not only just gets to show up, but the energy that it took to push them back, they get to have. Now that they get to see them, they get to recognize, actually, that thing is dope and I love it. So now that part's working towards you. So you end up with this like utter energy shift, but it breaks your whole life. I will not, it breaks your entire worldview to have that happen. And suddenly you're like, I hate this relationship I'm in. I hate this job that I'm in. And I think that's even also the part where I realize I'm like, oh, I crammed in a proton torpedo of a course into this, and people's intuition were like, but I do not want my life exploded. Like, I just wanted to be like kind of nicer to people, and I'm like, no, break your whole life.
Flip everything upside down.
And I'm like, maybe that wasn't the most responsible thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, this this self-development stuff is so scary because of those huge changes, and like that's part of you is seeking that, and part of you is going, no, stop. What are you doing?
I call it putting the foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. People are like, which one do I want to do? It's like, I don't know, which one do you want to do?
And that's such a hard thing to guide someone through in a course that's also delivered online, right? So kudos to you for getting people to go all the way to the end. Honestly, it's such a hard.
Well, I will say this: if anyone's listening and wanting to be like, "Am I the kind of person that makes it towards the end?" Literally, everyone who's made it towards the end has been like just like a huge baller. Like I was talking to my friend Lucy Bellwood, who also had made it to the end, and I was like, I'm annoyed because I wanted to help a lot of people, but the people that I did end up getting able to help. What she described it was sort of like a peer creation engine. It's like not only was it helping people, but it was also like getting sort of pre-qualifying people for like the type of like interactions that I wanted to have. And again, double-edged sword. On the one hand, I was like, yeah, everyone that I've met through there, like all the like the connections, like as a course creator, like that's just, it's like networking on steroids. It's like cool. Like, I help people do this amazing thing. And then if the results are also dope, I can be like, yo, now I know like a bunch of people who can do this amazing thing.
Yeah.
Go hit them up, like hook up the thing. Like that's been amazing. The double-edged sword part about that is that like for me to make money, I may have to let go of that I might need to find a way to help people that I don't already like to get results.
Yeah. It's like there's this, one of the best things about online courses is this like ability to meet people who are just incredible and awesome at whatever you're learning, right? But then as a course creator, you have to balance that with like, okay, how can I get this message to more people, and not break that level of what's the word, like how great of a student you get, right?
Yeah, well, it's shifting. So let's say the cost versus the reward. Right now, I have achieved so much reward. I've benefited. I've gained so much value from this course, immaterially. And let's be real, materially as well. Like I did do that. But if you're looking at the idea of value generation holistically, I smash out of the park success. Like it's amazing. This type of stuff in the relationships that I built, and that's amazing. But if my actual goal is, but I'd like the like fat stacks version of it. Like actually, I don't know if I want that one as much. Like I'm really good at doing that. So I'm not really, this is of course giving me more of what I already have versus this new thing I'm trying to get. Like the pendulum swing. And I do think this is really important for course creators because again, the very act of building it is dope. I think everyone should build a course just to encounter themselves with their knowledge. One of my Oracle deck scheme, its largest version is, I'd love to teach people how to build Oracle decks of their lived experience. Just straight up say like, all right, we're going to start from birth to now, and we're going to actually create you your own wisdom deck so that you don't have to be like, what am I about? I'm just like, just draw your cards. You know they're right because they're you. Like, let's just stop this whole randomness. And so in that same way, I think building a course kind of has the same effect for people. Like you really have to get your stuff down. You really have to be able to like look at yourself as a personal development exercise for yourself. Primo, you will gain infinite value out of doing that. And if you also want to gain other value,
it's like
there's some other stuff you have to do.
There's value even if you don't sell it ever, but also if you do sell it, awesome.
If you sell it, you will have sold it for some very specific, having aligned with some very specific success structures around how your personal development journey affects essentially the world. Like that's sometimes really hard for people where they're like, it's not selling, or maybe I'm just too weird. I'm like, it's not that you're too weird, but you're not weird in the right place. You haven't moved to the place where your weirdness becomes leveraged. And again, that's really hard to kind of bring the conversation back to the world building question. If the interior world is a world and it also has success structures, it's like, okay, cool. Here's where the rich people live in my inner world. your ability to go to that place in your mind is your ability to go to that place in the external world. You go there and you're like, oh, for me, wealth, quality, value is this. I should go to the places in the external world who agree with me. And then it becomes the easiest thing in the world. So your ability to like map that out, and I've pivoted the course also to kind of doing one-on-one again. Like I started doing one-on-one with Mastering Game of Life. Then weirdly, I built this course for Allyship, and now I've kind of gone back to doing one-on-one for Mastering Allyship. And it's been really cool because it's just all world building at this point. Like I'll set a made-up mountain. I'll be like, here's the top of the mountain. If you become an ally, what did that look like? What did that feel like? What experiences would you have? We sort of negotiate like, okay, what was the most fun way that you could have gone up that mountain knowing that you already succeeded? Great. Only do that. Now, who are the fuckers who are going to say, we absolutely don't want to go up that mountain because they're already at the top of a mountain that they love? Cool. What would make them want to leave that mountain and go up? And it's just negotiating that. And by the time that we leave, you know, every week, I sort of add more to that world and make it more rich and add more characters to it. So even when it leaves, it has kind of a life of its own. As they go out into the world, I'm like, yeah, so how did you see the world a little bit differently having moved these things around? And just by creating that feedback loop with people, some really cool transformative stuff can happen. But the big lesson that I learned through this was there are some parts of your process that you can't engineer away. And being like deeply sort of open to that and cognizant of that is key. Like my ability to help someone build a world via content and a video and at distance is greatly diminished from my ability to do that in person. And
yeah, for sure.
I'm not even sure why, but knowing that has, I think, taken a little bit of pressure off of me to like get this course right. It's like, no, I need to get people to talk to me one-on-one is really the answer. And that's a different game. And so that's really where I've been in the last like couple of weeks, is being like, okay, this is all part of a larger experience. And how do you make that path up that mountain towards the thing that I want engaging and fun? And again, somehow it's going to be Pokemon and Harvest Moon. I don't know how, but just sight unseen, it's going to be those two.
Yeah, maybe sometime in the far future, you're gonna have Allyship gym leaders, and if you make your way through all the gym leaders, you get to talk to Wendell.
I mean, it would be so like I can already see it so clearly, like especially post-COVID, being able to set like, yo, here are like cities running this stuff with literal people where you literally go to the place for the hour a week and workshop, do design stuff. Like at the very least, the win condition becomes, I've built a community of people who are trying to help stuff that aren't doing the same boring letter writing. Letter writing campaigns are fine, and some people love that to death. But right now, the main social unit of doing social good is political action. And I'm just like, that's not fun or creative at all. Like, anyway, sorry. You just spoke into my fucking vision. I'm like, yes, it'd be amazing. What's the New York chapter doing this year? What's going on? And I'm obsessed with enamel pins. So I'm just like, yes. And of course you have like your little pin case. And you're like, yes. Yeah. I did a quest at each gym across the country or in a domain of knowledge. And I'm actively tracking the results that I've gotten as an ally through time. Like that would be amazing. And I got the gold milk and I got 17 hearts and all the townspeople.
That's such an awesome vision. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, I got a little verklempt. That if that happened, oh man, that's my 90-year-old win condition. Just like, yes, I made a bunch of adults play video games to make the world a better place. Wasn't that funny?
Yeah. I mean, that's really like at the core of what you're teaching is like, hey, like this doesn't have to be super hard. You can play a game and come out with these huge shifts that are really difficult. And yeah, it's super cool to see that develop and come into being.
Yeah, I'm so glad because it's wild on the inside the cards. And I'm like, okay, let's make sure the lights stay up. I'm having a great time, but it is also like kind of, it can get myopic where I'm like, I have no idea what this looks like from outside. I'm looking at the Millennium Falcon like, okay, is the hyperdrive fixing? Did that light just fall off? Like, what's happening?
Awesome. Is there more stuff you wanted to talk about, or does that feel like a good place to wrap up?
Ooh, I mean, that feels pretty good. Well, no, here's what I want to do.
All right.
I want to flip the script a little bit. just because you brought it up and it's interesting, and I love podcasting. I love it when people ask questions of the guest, of the host. So have these conversations, like how far have they moved you towards like understanding the kind of course that you want to make, or even just this conversation, for example, like what has started to already emerge?
This is actually the first like conversation I've had specifically about courses. So you're number one. All right.
Wait, check this out.
Number one. All right. Incredible. Yeah. I mean, you know, the more I build in public, the more I interact with people on Twitter and online and stuff like that, the more I realize that, you know, just like you sort of came into developing this allyship course. I don't think whatever course I end up building is going to be something that I'm going to be like, yes, I'm going to build that. Right. It's going to be, you know, as I continue learning and as I continue sharing, you know, online through writing or through videos or whatever, like, I feel like this is something I'm going to end up sort of stumbling upon and building that way. And what I hope to get from, you know, these conversations, is to be able to come up with a version of a course where people really feel like they got a lot of value out of it, and that they were able to come up with, you know, these big personal shifts, right? I'm really tired of courses that are just like, here's a slideshow and like, here's the stuff. And like, there's a pop quiz at the end. And if you tick it off, I'll give you a certificate, you know, like the courses that have been hugely impactful in my life are ones where you build a community with the people that you're going through this journey with. And, you know, it's, the lure on the front end and the marketing end might be the Pokemon deck or the Pokemon card pack that you open and rip open and see what's inside. But the real payoff is like when you make it through the course and you have some sort of like big personal shift. That's the kind of course that I want to be making.
And it sounds like, not to put too much prophecy on you, but having been on the other side of it, like that whatever shift you go through is probably going to be what what you give people. Yeah. Or the shift that you've already gone through that maybe isn't owned just yet. You'll be like, oh, wait, when I was 14, I went through this shift. What, you mean everyone doesn't have that? Oh, great. Let's help with that shift. So it's cool because it's either reclaiming something that you had and lost, or that you're on the precipice of like finding something new, which is, again, pretty dope place to be.
Yeah. And, you know, my big thing is like the best person to learn from is someone who's like a step in front of you. Right. So that's why I'm talking to like new course creators, like yourself, and not talking to people who have been running courses for a decade. Right. Because I want to see this. I want to see the struggles that you're going through right now and sort of learn from that. And similarly, I think whatever course I come up with is going to be something that I'm working on right now. You know, I'm working on reclaiming a lot of like intuitive skills, like even this, like my ability to speak like this. I think probably even like the last time we met, I don't think I would have been able to speak as fluently as I am right now.
I mean, I didn't want to bring it up, but like I can tell, and it's like amazing. I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah. So
James,
you know,
James been on some stuff. This is cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you can see that, because there's like a lot of shifts that are happening like this that I want to help other people who were like me a couple of years ago be like, hey, like you don't have to be like an introverted nerd who's like sitting around like staring at his computer all day and have his attention collapse on this stuff. Like there's, you know, you have this human ability to do things like speak fluently or, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, that's kind of the direction I'm heading.
Yeah, that's what's up. Oh, that's so good to hear. I mean, whatever you said would have been good to hear. That's the horrifying reality of being a coach. Sometimes I'm just like, I am here to pretty much affirm everything you're going to say. But truthfully, from the bottom of my heart, like that's cool, because I've been thinking a lot about, and I will end here because this is I'm opening a door that I'm immediately just gonna be like, no, we're closing it.
Well, we can talk about it at a different time then.
Right? Yeah. The issue around like mental health, identity, all the stuff that coaches and therapists and the helping professions do, there's a problem of scale right now that I think a lot of people is really running into, which is, well, none of us are perfect, but the people who we've credentialed as perfect enough, like we've purposefully made like scarce, and that there is seemingly going to be a model of learning where it's not teacher who is far ahead of you, guiding you all the way up the mountain, but exactly what you're describing, people who are slightly more perfect being able to own that,
Mm-hmm.
but doing it with people who they already have rapport with, so that you don't need to be completely healthy. You actually just need a diverse number of unhealthy people to teach the adaptive strategy that they've developed to be okay to everyone.
I love it. Yeah.
And that somehow that actually could scale in a cool way. And so anyway, I saw that and was immediately just like, that rhymes with the success structure that a theoretical success structure I've seen in my brain, in my inner world. So there you go.
Cool. That's why I'm so big on learning in public, because I think that's a model where you can, everyone can be doing something and sharing what they're doing. And then the people who need that right now can find that and be like, yes, like that's exactly what I needed today, as opposed to, having to go through gatekeepers and hoping you find the right person to work with you one-on-one. It's like, oh, like I can just find these people online and start making progress already. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff.
I'm good. I got it out.
All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me. This has been awesome. Where can people find Allyship 2.0? Or what are you calling it? Do you know what you're calling it?
It's still gonna be Mastering the Game of Allyship. It might have a 2.0 if I want to be like cute about it. And it might even have a different name, like Building the Game of Allyship might be a better name for it. It's like, build it first and then master it on the other side. That just came to my mind just a second. But you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at just Wendell Britt. So
right on the screen here.
First name, last name, and Twitter at Wendell_Britt, Instagram Wendell_Britt. You can find the course at integralemergence.experienceify.io.
I'll put those links like in the description so people can actually click on them.
That might be there.
And
but the fastest way to find it is really just going to be through my name. Like it's on all of my stuff. And So, and awesome. Also on YouTube at Integral Emergence.
Cool. All right. Well, go follow Wendell on every single form of social media ever. He's really an awesome person. So you should see what he's up to. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome. And I love these chats. Totally happy to keep jamming.
Yeah, we should do that more in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good weekend. I'll see you around.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Wendell, for taking the time to chat today. You should follow Wendell on Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. Also, if you're interested, I've put a link to his course, Mastering the Game of Allyship, in the description below. You should go check it out. See ya.